Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. Very excited to be with you on this Monday. I have to admit to you, though, reeling a bit. Reeling a lot from my Vols Elite Eight loss to the Purdue Boilermakers yesterday. And one thing I will admit, in all walks of life, in all sports within the last half decade, Purdue straight up owns us. Whether it be the 2019 Sweet 16, whether it be this year's Elite Eight, whether it be some bowl game 3 years ago that I don't even remember anything except for the overtime period where we were robbed of a touchdown. Purdue owns Tennessee. I admit that because it is an absolute fact. We won't be talking about Tennessee. We will be talking about the best player and their opponent, and that would be Zach Edey, and why, despite all the hype and all the things that happened yesterday, him dropping a 40-burger on my Vols, dominating the paint all game long, he would not go in the first round if I were, well, all 30 GMs in the NBA. If I were a mid to late first round GM, wouldn't take him. I'll detail that in about 30 to 35 minutes. Also going to get into Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Iowa, LSU, rematch tonight. Man, I've been hoping for this. I think we all have been hoping for a rematch of a game that drew in 10 million views last year's national championship game in women's college basketball. They face off tonight for an opportunity to go back to the Final Four, the defending champion LSU Tigers, and then the team that they beat a year ago, Iowa. Good old-fashioned, like, kind of a rivalry feel, although you know my rule for rivalries. It ain't a rivalry until at least both sides get each other at least one time. So I'll talk about sort of the big storylines of that game, and at least one I'm looking forward to seeing in about 15 minutes or so. Also, why Draymond Green's outstanding performance yesterday for my Warriors in a big win, fourth straight win, mind you, against the San Antonio Spurs, made me really mad. Like, not Draymond against the Orlando Magic mad, but mad. I didn't like it. I'll tell you, I should say I didn't like it, but it made me, it agitated me. I'll detail that in about 45 to 50 minutes or so. And at the end of today's show, very excited to get into Joel Embiid, who reportedly is coming back from injury with the Philadelphia 76ers. And it appears I'm going to be the only one in all walks of the media, high or low, recognized or maybe not as much, who's going to put the requisite pressure on Joel Embiid to do his thing in the postseason. I'll detail that at the top of the next hour. I'm going to try and keep this show shorter than usual because Iowa LSU tips off in less than an hour, and I don't want to miss it. Very excited to get into that, or about an hour, 10 minutes or so, but there you go. But first, we got to start with the king. And I've started a lot of shows. This goes without saying. In the four and a half year history of carving it up, talking about one LeBron James, who last night, the guy's a freak. Last night against the Brooklyn Nets, I'm hearing, it's the Brooklyn Nets. It's an NBA team. And doing what he did at age 39 is insane. LeBron James in 37 minutes dropped a 40-burger with, by the way, a cool 7 rebounds, 5 assists. It's not just that he dropped 40, ladies and gentlemen. He did so on 13 for 17 shooting and 9 for 10 from three-point range. 9 for 10. LeBron James shot 10 three-pointers, missed 1. A fun fact, not necessarily for me as a Warriors fan, but it's pretty remarkable. LeBron James this season is shooting 41.6% from three. It's the best he's ever shot in his career from distance. That is better this season than his old running mate back in 2016 that won a title with him, Kyrie Irving. It's better than Klay Thompson, a Splash Brother. And it's better than the Splash Brother, the Splash Man, if you will, Steph Curry. Now, mind you, the shots Steph takes are obviously more difficult than probably anybody in basketball, and he obviously takes way more than LeBron does on a game-to-game basis. Nonetheless, it's outstanding. And I was thinking about LeBron today. I don't want to make this a Lakers topic because I talked about the Lakers last Wednesday when they beat the Bucks without LeBron, made that big fourth quarter comeback. I said that validated what I've been saying all season. Don't care what their seed is. That's a title contender. That Denver will beat them, I think, but Denver's not. Let's be real. Denver would much rather see Sacramento in the first round than the LA Lakers. Okay? OKC doesn't want to see the Lakers. Minnesota definitely doesn't want to see the Lakers. I don't trust Minnesota at all. The top seeded teams don't want to see the Lakers in a 7-game series. As far as LeBron, though, so you think about a guy who came into the NBA in 2003, in a league that was still, again, sort of reeling a little bit or maybe a lot after the retirement of Jordan. Obviously, Jordan came back, played a couple years in Washington, but that was, of course, Jordan was a shell of himself in his older age, didn't take as much care of his body, and was an even worse teammate with the Washington Wizards than he was with the Bulls. But collectively, the league just simply was not as popular as it used to be in the 90s. LeBron came into an NBA where a three-point shot was nice to have, but not something that was like it is today, 20 years later, 21 years later, required almost. Like, again, I've said for years, or for the last few years, the only star player, only superstar player in the NBA that can get away without a consistent three-point shot or jump shot in general is Giannis Antetokounmpo, because let's see, he's literally, statistically, and by the eye test, the most dominant player we have seen in the paint since Shaq. He's not better than Shaq in the paint, obviously. Shaq was a man amongst boys. Not to say Giannis isn't. Giannis just isn't on that level, obviously. Giannis only can get away with it because he is, after all, the Greek freak. Everybody else has to adapt and shoot the three. But as far as the word adapt, think about this, folks. Anybody in any walk of life who is not an original at what they do, and they come into an industry and change everything, i.e. Jeff Bezos with retail. All right, back in the day, or how about Netflix and Blockbuster? Netflix and Blockbuster were the same company. Netflix saw where the market was going in terms of streaming. They adapted. Blockbuster didn't. We see where Netflix is today. Blockbuster, I'm not sure. I think they got like one store in the United States now, if I'm not mistaken. The company's dead, essentially. Originals who change everything don't necessarily have to adapt. That's Steph Curry. Now, Steph has changed aspects of his game. Steph's improved his handle. Steph has put on more muscle. He can finish at the rim better than he used to. He's a better defensive player, I think, in year 15 than he was in year 1. Steph's changed aspects of his game, but at the core of what Steph is, moving without the ball, shooting at the most ridiculous level we've ever seen anybody shoot. Steph hasn't had to change his game. LeBron has. LeBron James around, let's call it 2015, 16, 17, somewhere around that area, because LeBron's a smart guy, in my opinion, highest basketball IQ ever. He saw where the league was going, and he said to himself, okay, right now, again, we're calling this 2015, 16, 17, still in the heart of his prime, still winning championships, still going to a bunch of finals in Cleveland. He looks around the landscape of the league and says, okay, I can still dominate the league by just hitting the occasional three, a nice fadeaway. LeBron has over time developed a nice fadeaway, kind of similar to the way Jordan did at the end of his career, right? But I can get into the paint, drawing the help defense, drawing weak side help, kicking out to an open shooter, and let them do the rest. Let the chips fall where they may in that regard. But if I want to last, and that's what we talk about with LeBron, like, oh my gosh, he's averaging 25, 8, and 7 on over 50% from the field, over 40% from three in year 21, which is mind-boggling. But part of the reason why is because of a decision he made a little less than a decade ago to look around the NBA landscape and say, the league is changing. I have to change with it, or at least tinker my game to adapt with it in order to sustain this. Can LeBron still be dominant down low? Can LeBron James still get almost any shot that he wants down low when he drives the basket full steam ahead like the locomotive player that he is? And then on occasion, if the help defense comes, kick it out to an open shooter, you better believe it. Can he do it at the same rate he could in the middle of his prime? I know LeBron's so great, but this isn't prime LeBron. Let's not forget what LeBron was doing at the peak of his powers. He can't do that for as great of a rate now as he could then. So he says, I'm going to maintain my level of dominance while I lose just a little bit of my athleticism, although it's hard to tell, honestly. I'm going to add this aspect to my game, the three-point shot. And thus, last night, 9 for 10 from three. Thus, this season, shooting 41.5% from three-point range. I mean, again, LeBron in year 21 is still getting better at things. Of course, guys are going to get smarter by the end of their career, but oftentimes, and this is, I remember Tony Romo talking about this on a football life years ago, different sport, but obviously the quarterback position, kind of like the point guard position, which LeBron's like a point forward, very cerebral position. You got to be able to process things quick on the fly. Romo talked about by the time he had gotten that down in his career, his body started failing him. And so he was never able to combine the peak of his athletic powers with the peak of his intellectual and being able to break the game down. Those powers. That's what makes Mahomes so amazing. Like, he's got an innate gift to just read things at the blink of an eye, and he has unbelievable abilities as a player. Again, if you combine Peyton Manning's ability to break stuff down at the line of scrimmage with Aaron Rodgers' talent, you have Patrick Mahomes. That's LeBron. Is he the same LeBron now as he was? No, of course he's not. Like I said, let's please not forget what LeBron was doing at the peak of his powers. 2013 Miami, 2018 Cleveland. Best 2 seasons I've ever seen for LeBron James. But this is last night, and this season is a perfect representation of what has driven him to as long of a career as he's had. And listen, he talked about after the game in the locker room, hey, I don't have a whole lot longer left. He joked, I'm definitely not going to be playing another 21 years. But being able to say, whenever it is time for me to hang these sneakers up, these King Jameses that I'm wearing, whatever edition they are, whenever it is time for me to walk off the court for the last time as an NBA player. By the way, in a league where I've spent more than half of my life it's weird to say, but an employee of, if not the face of, for 21 years. I want to make sure I have gotten every last ounce of myself that I could possibly get. We can argue Jordan, LeBron, GOAT. I said earlier this season, LeBron, I forgot. I think he had a massive in-season tournament game. I think it was against Phoenix or something. He had a massive performance. And I came out the next day on this show. It was on a Wednesday in the middle of the football season, leading with LeBron. I said, can we just stop with Michael versus LeBron until LeBron's retired? Like, again, I think LeBron's the greatest player ever. Many agree with me. Many disagree with me. But can we put that off to the end of his career and recognize what we're witnessing right now, which is the greatest prime we have seen in American team sports outside of Tom Brady. Tom Brady's the only guy that can look LeBron eye to eye and say, I had just as great of a prime as you and just as long of a prime as you did. It's incredible what he did last night. So hats off to LeBron James. Again, big picture for the Lakers. Obviously, them blowing out the Nets wasn't surprising at all. They're a much better team. And again, I maintain what I've said all season long. Through their highs, through their lows, that's a championship contender. That team can win the championship. Been saying that all season long. Don't trust Darvin Ham. Don't trust D'Angelo Russell. Everything else I love. And by the way, I think I saw some stats today. LeBron's leading the league in scoring in the fourth quarter. But then again, I could have sworn I've been told he's not clutch. Seems pretty clutch to me. Even though Steph should win Clutch Player of the Year because his clutch stats are better. But nonetheless, fantastic performance by LeBron last night. And it is a perfect representation of why his prime, or not his prime, but why his career has lasted as long as it has, with him playing at the level that he is still somehow playing at in year 21 at age 39. Shout out to LeBron James. It's just amazing, man. I mean, again, you watch this guy, and he'll have a couple of plays a game. Again, he can't do it at as great of a rate as he could in like the mid 2010s, which I think is like the best LeBron that we've seen. But he'll put together like 2-3 minute stretches where I'm like he'll have us fooled for a minute. He'll have me fooled at least and be like, he's still in his prime. Like, he shouldn't be doing this stuff. I mean, again, chase down blocks still. He's still, it seems like as fast as any NBA player. Again, the occasional chase down block and he's incredible. I remember he threw one pass against my Warriors where he like threw it off, fading to his right. It was a fast break. He was a couple steps past half court, and he one-handed, like almost underhand bounced it through Andrew Wiggins' legs. He nutmegged him to, I think it was D'Angelo Russell, who then, laid it in. It was just remarkable. We don't give enough credit to the little intricate aspects of LeBron in terms of what he has done. It's remarkable. There's no question about it. Like I said, so LSU Iowa tips off in about almost exactly an hour from now. So again, my shows tend to be around an hour and a half or hour 15, hour and a half, 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much. Feel free to chime in the comment section. Let me know what you think about my take, what you think about it, or any thoughts you have on anything else in the world of sports, or really anything for that matter. Hope everybody had a great Easter weekend. Hope everybody is avoiding as much, hate to use this term, but fake news as possible on this April Fool's Day, because, man, we had some clunkers. I'm not going to lie. This morning I saw a Shohei Ohtani has been banned 5 years for 5 years by Major League Baseball, fake tweet, and I legit believed it for a good 10 seconds. And then I was like, oh, it's April Fool's Day. Because I saw this tweet, and I'm like, this is from a reputable account. Like, there's no way. And I searched, I'm like, there's nothing. I'm like, oh, it's April. Yeah, okay. So we got to, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. Not to be like a killjoy. I don't want to be like the unwritten rules club in Major League Baseball. I hate April Fool's Day. Hate it. It's hard enough to decipher what's real and what's not, especially on that app run by the billionaire guy. But it's hard enough to decipher what's real and what's not. This day just makes it even harder. Okay, how about we do away with April Fool's Day? How about that? Okay, there's a lot of other fun holidays. Come on. Okay, transitioning now though to LSU and Iowa, the rematch of the women's college basketball national championship game from a year ago, and a game that drew in over 10 million viewers. It was the most watched national title game in the history of women's college basketball. I believe it was the most watched college basketball game, men or women's, on ESPN. Now, ESPN obviously carries the women's tournament, and then CBS, TNT, TBS, they carry out the men's tournament just about every year. But it's the rematch from a year ago. It's an LSU team that's a 3 seed, Iowa team that's a 1 seed, and it's an LSU team, defending national champions, that I thought over the offseason actually got better because they added Haley Van Lith from Louisville. Now, she's not the player, or she hasn't had the impact for LSU that I thought she would. She's been benched in a couple games this season, so again, we'll see what her impact is tonight, in general for the Tigers. But again, what I love about this matchup, and this is, let's be real, this is going to be the biggest night. This is history, ladies and gentlemen. The biggest night in the history of women's college basketball. Maybe women's basketball as a whole, because you have all of the storylines from that game a year ago, all the things that followed, all the nonsensical criticism of Angel Reese, so much that Caitlin Clark even had to defend Angel Reese, it's ridiculous that Caitlin even had to, but the fact that so many people seem to be immature on how trash talk works in sports, in between the lines, just about everything goes. That's kind of it's kind of how it works. But the point of all of it is, right, is that when you have interest in sports, when interest in a particular sport is at its peak, the NFL can kind of avoid this because they are the king of television. But other sports, there's a villain, so to speak, or a perceived villain. There are storylines. In many cases, there's a history. Again, the game a year ago. There's, again, anytime a game, a sport, an athlete, a team is discussed outside of the world of sports, that's when you know it's made it. There's 3 major figures to me in this game. I think they're all quite obvious. With all due respect to Johnson, the guard for LSU, who had a fantastic game, fantastic finish against UCLA in a game LSU could have easily lost the Sweet 16. She went off. Angel Reese chipped in as well, and LSU was able to hang on. And then obviously Iowa blitzed Colorado. The matchup was just bad. Colorado not good at defending the 3. Iowa, they're kind of known for shooting the 3, so that was never going to be a close game from the jump. This game will be. First major character is the story, because it is a story. Sports at its peak is storytelling, as we are seeing it in real time. First major character, so to speak, in the story is Angel Reese. Now, I get so often, it's internet narratives, what do they say? Perception can become reality. That because Angel Reese doesn't score 1 million points a game, that, she's this overrated player. Look, is she Caitlin Clark? No, because nobody's Caitlin Clark. With respect to Paige Beckers, Juju Watkins, who, by the way, will face after LSU Iowa, and I think a little after 9 Eastern. If it wasn't for this game, that'd be the better game thus far, best game thus far this tournament, because Paige and Juju are both special players and have very bright futures at the next level, the rest of their college careers, and at the next level. But with all due respect, Caitlin's obviously the face of women's college basketball. She's going to, if she hasn't already, win the Women's National Player of the Year award. Because Angel Reese isn't that, and because she did the trash talk, all of a sudden that trash talking a superior player is all of a sudden not allowed or is out of bounds or something. Like, I reject that idea. Okay, that's why you had Dennis Rodman for the Bulls, Draymond Green for the Golden State Warriors. That's why these enforcer types, and I don't even know if Angel Reese necessarily fits that mold, because of, again, she plays a whole different role for LSU. I don't even know if that works, but it's a weird way people view it sometimes. But Angel Reese, right? She was the anchor for the best defense in the SEC. She's second in women's college basketball in rebounding, and she's been outstanding in this tournament. Again, the big finish against UCLA. She was excellent in the first 2 rounds. LSU and Iowa both have had scares. Iowa almost got knocked out by West Virginia at home in the second round. LSU almost got knocked out by UCLA before they put together, again, a great 2.5, 3-minute stretch to close that basketball game. But Angel Reese, again, the story from a year ago. And she was doing a press conference, I think it was yesterday, when she was asked about, like, do you have any history with Caitlin Clark, or is there anything? And she cut the report off. She said, there's no dislike between us. I like Caitlin Clark. No reason to believe she seems like, I'm sure she likes me as well. But in between the lines, it's competition, man. We're trying to win. Anything goes. As long as it's not dirty, as long as you're not trying to injure somebody, anything goes. And so Angel Reese, because of the ridiculous criticism of what happened with her a year ago, as well as her clear and obvious talent, and she's going to be, assuming she comes out and goes to this year's WNBA draft, all likelihood is going to be a top 10 pick. The next character is Kim Mulkey. Now, Kim Mulkey is, in essence, kind of the villain of the story, so to speak, for a number of reasons. Again, Kim Mulkey isn't, and listen, the Washington Post thing, and she's like, I'm going to sue the person. I'm going to take legal action against the guy who wrote this hit piece in the Washington Post. Folks, I read it when it came out. Ian Rappaport for the NFL Network posted a link. That's where I was able to see it. I read the article on Saturday as I was watching, in between commercial breaks, watching the LSU game. And at the end of it, I'm like, and this is no disrespect to the journalist. None. He did an excellent job. But I was at the end of it, I was like, I didn't really learn anything here that I didn't know. I thought it was going to be the way Kim Mulkey presented it, which probably shouldn't have took her for her word. But I was thinking there's going to be this bombshell thing. It talked about her background, her estranged relationship with her father. I think her sister as well. She has, again, she sometimes through no fault of her own has kind of had some burned bridges throughout her life. Well, listen, that's fine. There's a lot of people that can relate to that. It's obviously once you continue to read the article, and again, we learn things that we already knew, that she didn't treat her openly gay and lesbian players, even those that were in the closet, terribly well, or at least not even necessarily not that well, but certainly not as well as the non-gay and lesbian players, right? We know the fact that when her former star center, Brittany Griner, who she coached at Baylor, was overseas detained in Russia, and that whole controversy, Kim Mulkey said nothing. Now, I use the example, again, to throw Tennessee in here because we did lose, but I want to shout out Coach Barnes. If, God forbid, Dalton Knecht, who I think the country got to see yesterday and throughout the season, kid is really special. If, God forbid, Dalton Knecht was detained in a communist country, you think Rick Barnes is radio silent for the entirety outside of a couple very cliche clips on like a radio interview I think Brittany was detained for 9 months, 10 months. If that was the case with Dalton Knecht or with a lot of other coaches with star players, you think they would have been that quiet? Doubt it. There's obviously a strange relationship between her and Brittany Griner. To me, 2 things can be true. That's one of my favorite sayings in sports. There's 2 things that can be true about Kim Mulkey. On one hand, she is unquestionably, undoubtedly, and undeniably one of the 5 greatest head coaches in the history of women's college basketball. She's one of only 3 individuals to win 4 more national championships. You want to take a wild guess who the other 2 are? I'll give you a hint. Gino Auriemma at UConn, the late, great Pat Summitt at Tennessee. That's it. And Kim Mulkey. So on one hand, phenomenal coach has sent a lot of players to the next level. On the other hand, this is objectively true. Probably not the first person you want in your corner when the fit hits the fan in your personal life. Just not really, quote unquote, or so to speak, a foxhole person. Somebody like again, there's a partially, I invite anybody to go read the Washington Post article. Multiple instances throughout her life where, not the most loyal person from a personal relationship. Forget professional, because sometimes you can't be loyal professionally because sometimes it'll cost you. You can lose games, you can lose jobs, whatever the case may be. But in your personal life, it's different. So not necessarily a foxhole person. On the other hand, outstanding head coach. So you have that aspect of it. Kim Mulkey, major character in this entire, obviously, Iowa's head coach, Bluter, I think's her name. again, she seems to be a very likable person. Obviously, Caitlin, her teammates love their head coach. They seem to have a great relationship, much more tight than the LSU players have with Kim Mulkey. But again, listen, LSU did win a year ago, so you have to take that into account as well. And again, they do have a better overall roster. I don't think that's that controversial. And of course, the major character in this story, in this game, is Caitlin Clark, who is, I think, the second greatest female player ever. That's with respect to Candace Parker. That's with respect to Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops, Sue Bird, whoever, Brianna Stewart, Sabrina Askew, whoever you want to throw out there. Again, I'm also factoring college careers as well. To me, the greatest female player, the greatest female college player, I should say, I want to clarify that I've ever seen, Maya Moore. Maya Moore and Diana Taurasi, those two, and Taurasi's probably one of the 2 or 3 greatest players ever in the WNBA. Those two, to me, especially Maya, could have played in the NBA. Like you just watch, again, their physicality, their handles, both gifted shooters, gifted scorers, excellent defensive and competitive fire, edge. In the college game, on the women's side, Caitlin's the second best I've ever seen to Maya Moore. Like, again, people forget how good, and some will say, well, obviously she played at UConn. Listen, I get the UConn thing, and that I do factor that in. Like, if you go down the list of the greatest female college players ever, it's a bunch of UConn women, a lot of Tennessee women. Go Vols. And then you have your Sabrina Eskews, you have your Cheryl Swoops, you have your outliers, generally speaking. And Caitlin Clark is obviously one of those. Iowa women's basketball was not exactly a talking point before she got there in the fall of 2020. They just weren't. You talk about a Caitlin Clark, who I'm going to read the major aspects of her resume, the major accomplishments that she's gotten. She's the first unanimous National Player of the Year in Big Ten history. She's a 3-time first-team All-American, including unanimous this season. Actually, all 3. She was unanimous first-team All-American. She's a 3-time Big Ten Player of the Year, most points in the history of the NCAA, men's or women's. She broke Pistol Pete's record, obviously, a few weeks ago. First woman with 1,000 points in multiple seasons. Most 3-point makes in a single season, men or women. First 30-point triple-double in the history, men or women, of college basketball in the NCAA tournament, in March Madness. So simply put, resume speaks for itself. Caitlin Clark's pretty good. And so this, to me, you know what it reminds me a little bit of? It reminds me of some of those LeBron series. And again, this is a 1-game winner take all. Like, if this were a 7-game series, I'd take LSU. I wouldn't say not without hesitation, but I think it'd be a 6-game series and LSU would win. And by the end of it, we're like, yeah, LSU's better. Like, LSU's better than Iowa. And I think LSU is better than Iowa in general, but it's March Madness. It's 1 game. We've seen plenty of upsets, obviously. This reminds me of those LeBron series in Miami, especially as D. Wade got older and Chris Bosh's role was reduced when they were playing those Spurs teams, right? Legendary head coach who, kind of operated from a drill sergeant perspective, and Greg Popovich. You have a great great big in Tim Duncan. You got Angel Reese. You got a really nice scoring guard. You could say Ginobili Parker. You obviously, Flau'jae Johnson, I believe is how you pronounce her first name, Johnson. Again, you have sort of the up-and-comer Haley Van Lith with LSU, Kawhi Leonard with the San Antonio Spurs. And then the other side, again, people forget that Miami team around late 2013. So 2013 finals, with the year Ray Allen hit the shot and LeBron went crazy in Game 7. Dwayne Wade's knees starting to fail him. Chris Bosh's role, again, had begun to be reduced to a certain degree, as had his abilities. Ray Allen, the reason he was in Miami, Boston let him walk. A lot of veterans in Miami who weren't at the peak of their powers, at the top of their career, at the best, kind of in their prime. That's obviously not the case with Iowa, because they're college kids. It's going to take a while before they get to their prime. If, again, some of them do end up going to the WNBA. LSU, to me, absolutely has the better team, better coach, but Iowa has the best player. And we've seen both sides of the coin. 2013, Miami, San Antonio went Game 7. Obviously, Ray Allen hit the shot in Game 6. LeBron had an amazing performance in Game 7, hit the dagger shot with 30 seconds left. I think it was over Kawhi. And the best player in the series won. A year later, San Antonio wiped the floor with Miami. So there's both sides of that coin. I think we're going to see that tonight. LSU won a year ago. They were the better team. They had some outstanding shot makers. I forget the one player for LSU. She wore number 45. Outstanding. She was hitting incredible shots from the perimeter. Was outstanding in the game. And again, Iowa just never was able to generate the kind of separation that they needed to win. Caitlin shot like 9 for 22, which isn't terrible, but it's also not terribly efficient. And LSU won that game comfortably. This, to me, because of the hype, because of the buildup, because of the history, because of the fact that this is, again, the biggest night in the history of women's college basketball, I think both teams are jacked for this game, which, again, tips off in about 45 minutes. Cannot wait to watch it. I think this is an emotional game. I think both teams come out a little cold to start, not cold, but a little jittery to start just because of all the hype around it. And then as the game wears on, they kind of settle into it. Great defensive plays, great shot making, a back and forth. Both teams will go on big runs. And then fourth quarter hits, last 2-3 minutes. And as comfortable as LSU is because their players have been together, by and large, have been together for an extended period of time, Iowa's best players, like their 3 best players, all came in the same year. They're all seniors. And so the experience there, the key for them, don't turn the ball over. You're not going to get a lot of buckets in the paint. You're going to have to kind of rely on the three-point shot. But if there's anybody in the sport right now that we should rely on to hit those shots, is it not number 22 for the Hawkeyes? So I'm going to go with the Iowa Hawkeyes to win in the Elite Eight by a final score of 75-72. They're 1.5-point favorites as we sit here today. Last I checked, Iowa's a 1.5 favorites. I think LSU should be favored. It is a neutral site game, of course, but I'm going to go Iowa 75-72. I think it's a hotly contested game. And by the end, we are sitting back and saying, okay, again, Kim Mulkey aside, because she's a coach, the 2 major players in this game, the 2 major characters of the story that we are about to witness, we're going to be seeing them a lot of big games for years to come. And who knows? Maybe Caitlin versus Angel, Reese versus Clark. Maybe that's the player rivalry that women's college basketball needs. We know what Caitlin's going to do at the next level. I think once we get to year 2, I mean this, folks, once we get to some point in year 2 of her career, with respect to all the great women's players right now, she'll be the best player. She'll be the best player. And I was a big Sabrina Ionescu fan at Oregon. Talked about her on this show 4 years ago when she broke the all-time triple-doubles record. I don't think it's a triple-doubles record. I think it was like a first player to get 1,000 points, 1,000 assists, 1,000 rebounds, something like that. I love Sabrina Ionescu, Asia Wilson, Kelsey Plum, Brianna Stewart. Throw out any player you want. Year 2, Caitlin will be the best player in the WNBA. And last take on this game, I want to make sure I address this because I'm hearing the takes have been bad on this particular subject for about the last 2 months that, well, Caitlin Clark cannot be a legend unless she wins a championship. Okay. So was Larry Bird not a legend because he didn't win a championship against Michigan State? Now you say, well, LSU historically is not like a women's college basketball powerhouse. Yeah, but they have a coach who's won 3 titles before that and was very successful at Baylor. Again, Kim Mulkey, the person, but in terms of coaching history, folks, it speaks for itself. And she implemented that, obviously, at LSU. She won a title by year 2. That Caitlin has to win a championship. Again, you look at the greatest players in women's college basketball history. I'm going to go out on a limb and say 85-90%. If you looked at the 50 best players in women's college basketball history, 90 is a bit strong. 75-80% are UConn and Tennessee players because historically those have been the 2 dominating schools because of their 2 all-time coaches and all-time players. Again, you have your outliers. You have your Cheryl Swoops, your Sabrina Ionescu's, your Caitlin Clark's. This notion that it's all wiped away. Every accomplishment, being the all-time leading scorer in the history of college basketball, being a 3-time unanimous All-American. I'm going to go on a limb and say a championship would absolutely boost it. And by the way, the next round, the Final Four, we get LSU or Iowa against UConn or USC. Juju, Paige, Angel, and Caitlin, like the major stars of the tournament are literally on this side of the bracket. We're going to see all 4 tonight. But Caitlin's not, she can't be a legend unless she wins. Was Steph Curry a college basketball legend? Of course he was. You're like, well, Davidson, Iowa. Okay. Let's, how about this? Have you had a conversation in your life, unless you live in Des Moines or in the great state of Iowa, outside of there, have you ever had a conversation in your life about Iowa women's college basketball for more than 2 minutes, if that, prior to Caitlin Clark? No? Okay, then she's an all-time legend given what she's accomplished. Like that, again, all-time tournament games, all-time regular season records, all-time regular season performances. I mean, she's a guard, darn near averaging a triple-double on efficient shooting. That's the thing with Westbrook. You're like, oh, Westbrook averaged a triple-double. Yeah, he was inefficient as crap. Couldn't shoot. It's amazing. Cannot wait for this game. It's going to be a doozy. And I got Iowa winning 75-72. I think they get revenge from a year ago. And what I hope doesn't happen, for some reason, not to be a negative guy here, but I have a terrible, terrible feeling, because I know the media, like we all do, that, and the internet, more specifically, that by the end of the game, we won't have a controversy to the level that we had with Angel Reese, which that shouldn't have been a controversy at all, but it was, because that's the world we live in. If any player, Caitlin, Angel, Flau'jae, anybody is maybe a bit boisterous and talks their talk, oh, I can't wait to see the overreaction. Just, I have a feeling, I'm going to be talking about this game on Wednesday. I really pray to God that there's no unsportsmanlike controversy. That will be the topic of all, the first takes and the first things first and all those shows tomorrow morning. We shall see, but I'm very excited tonight. All right, staying in college basketball, staying in March Madness, transition to the men's side. This is a painful one, folks. This is a painful one. Not that UConn went on a 30-0 run against Illinois in a game that was tied at 23 at the half. And again, nobody's beating UConn. That's for UConn. It's not going to let everybody stays healthy. They're winning the national title, and I don't think they'll be challenged, to be completely honest with you. Alabama's an excellent team. I said as a Vols fan, Alabama's tremendously coached. Nate Oates has done an awesome job there. They got this one guy, Pierce, I think is his name. I might be getting his name wrong. This guard they have is really, really good. May have an NBA future. His size might hurt him, but Alabama's really good. UConn's an 11.5-point favorites against Alabama in the Final Four on Saturday. It's not that NC State, this actually made my day. This made my day slightly better after the Tennessee loss, that all the Duke fans that I know in my life, Barry Grant Jr., didn't get to gloat over me that their team got deeper than mine in the tournament. So the fact that NC State, this 11 seed, who wasn't even a bubble team, they were dead in the water to make March Madness. They win all 5 games in the ACC tournament, including one game against Virginia, where they're down 3 with seconds left. A guy for Virginia misses a free throw that would have clinched it. They go down the length of the court, shoot a wild shot, bank it in, win in overtime, and we're sitting here today. NC State's 2 wins away from a championship. So it's an incredible storyline there. Burns, the big guy for NC State, is getting scouted by NFL draft evaluators like that. There's so many storylines in NC State. They're kind of a feel-good story. Love that the energy their coach brings to the table. So listen, good for NC State. I, generally speaking, do not like double-digit seeds or big underdogs getting this deep in the tournament. But let's be honest, NC State, Jimmy Valvano, obviously they beat 5 Slamma Jamma back in the 80s. Like, there's history there. ACC's the power conference. ACC and Big East are the power conferences of college basketball. That's NC State. If there's a double-digit seed makes the Final Four, NC State's a great candidate to do so. UCLA was a double-digit seed. We know UCLA's decorated history. They got to the Final Four, lost to Jalen Suggs on a crazy bank-in shot at the buzzer a few years ago. But that's the kind of upsets we need to see by and large. I need to see it. Let's see. Barry Grant Jr. See, I'm disgusted. Barry was, oh my gosh, I wish y'all could see we have like a group chat in the Grid Network. I wish some of y'all could have seen how Barry was just, Tennessee, they're what are they? What do he say? They're not even the bridesmaids at the wedding. They're kicked out. Oh my gosh. And Duke lost. And by the way, who knocked Duke out of the tournament last year? Tennessee. So guess what? NC State's the bridesmaids at the wedding. Who knows? They may be the bride when it's all said and done. DJ Burns against Zach Edey. My gosh, it's going to be a fun matchup. Boston Sports Summit. My guy Tim in the comments. Shout out to Barry. Shout out to Tim. Tim says DJ Burns the sole reason I'm still paying attention to the NCAA tournament. It is, again, a lot of it is because I don't want to go this far, but UConn winning kind of feels like a foregone conclusion. Again, if it were best of 7 series, I would absolutely come in here and say a foregone conclusion. Nobody's beating UConn. Again, their length, their size, their shooting ability. They've got veterans. They got juniors, seniors. They got an excellent freshman player who's got an NBA future. But generally speaking, in a one game winner take all, sure, a team can get hot or something. But man, I just don't see it happening. They lost 3 games all year. The defending national champions. They have a fantastic head coach. So. But the DJ Burns matchup, Tim, DJ Burns, and the guy I'm about to talk about, Zach Edey, that is going to be a blast to watch. Two bigs. One may have an NFL future. I mean, that's the to me that of all the great storylines in this tournament, for some reason, one of the 3 or 4 best players left may go to a different league. And again, we've seen Julius Peppers. I think he played in the Final Four, if I'm not mistaken, played for North Carolina, went on to become one of the great pass rushers of the last couple generations. So there's Jimmy Graham played college basketball, and it had not a Hall of Fame career, but a really good career at the next level, particularly with the Saints. So there you go. As far as Zach Edey, and I'm sure those of you that know I'm a Tennessee fan, if you didn't, now you do. Go Vols till I die. I may sound a bit salty and jealous is the wrong word because obviously I'm not exactly Zach Edey's size. I may sound bitter about how the game played out yesterday. Listen, ultimately, the best player on the floor played for Tennessee. His name's Dalton Knecht. He's going to have a much better history in the NBA, as I'm about to detail in just a second with Edey. Just didn't get the requisite help. Zakai Ziegler, our star point guard from the great state of New York, who's produced a lot of great point guards, had a rough game, hasn't had a bad game. It seems like forever. He picked a bad time to have his worst game. Again, some of our other guys, Josiah Jordan James. Tennessee really doesn't have a big to be able to, certainly not, you can't stop Zach Edey at the college level, but certainly guys that can make it difficult on him. Tennessee just didn't, their best center, Tennessee's best center, most consistent center is kind of undersized. So and again, their tallest center is kind of light in the behind, and Edey was just pushing around all game. So the matchup definitely favored Purdue. Is again, if I were Rick Barnes, the great should-be Hall of Fame head coach for Tennessee, shout out to Coach Barnes, I would have went the Steve Kerr route, went small, and just played 5 out for reasons that I'm about to describe with Zach Edey's, sort of draft outlook. I saw one draft evaluator, mock draft, whatever, having Zach Edey going 14th overall in the draft. Now, again, we got the lottery coming up in about a month and a half, so we'll see who gets the 14th pick. Could be my Warriors for all we know. But, excuse me. Zach Edey, I don't care who drafts him. I don't care if you need size, if you don't need size. If you take Zach Edey with the 14th overall pick as a GM in this league, you need to be seriously reevaluated. We have seen countless. As a matter of fact, the last 2 players of the year prior to Zach Edey won a year ago in 2023. He shouldn't win this year. Dalton Knecht should win this year, but they probably already voted for Zach Edey, so it is what it is. So he's going to have 2 Naismith College Player of the Year awards. Yep. So did Luka Garza. Remember Luka Garza? We're talking about Iowa basketball. How about the men's side? Luka Garza. Dominant player, man, big 6'10" guy. I mean, just dominant on the glass and was just unstoppable down in the paint. Here's the problem. Can't shoot, can't defend on the perimeter. So he went in the second round, and he's averaging, I think I checked this, 3 points a game, and is a bench warmer for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Of course, they have a ton of size with Towns when healthy and Gobert and Naz Reid. Luka Garza is not an NBA player, not an NBA starter, certainly. How about a guy who's smaller in stature, but I would argue certainly more dominant on the defensive end, a kid out of Kentucky by the name of Oscar Tshiebwe. Rookie. Mike Guido, shout out to Mike Guido. Me and him have done a draft show. Barry Grant Jr. has been a part of them for the last 3 years on the grid, a couple times on my channel, and then last year on the grid, and hopefully again this year on the grid. Last year did the draft show. And as the second round is kind of wearing on and we're sort of waiting, we're seeing, okay, who's the best player still available? And Oscar Tshiebwe still there. And I remember for the longest time, it was like best player available, Oscar Tshiebwe, Kentucky. Never got drafted. I believe he's now with the Utah Jazz and has been playing in the G League. Nothing against Oscar Tshiebwe. Guy was a heck of a player in college. Won the Naismith Player of the Year in 2022. Not an NBA player. Why are those guys? And why is Zach Edey not an NBA player? Well, Bryson, he's big, dominant, and 7'4". Yeah, this isn't 1985. It's 2024. As I talked about earlier when I talked about LeBron and how he's adapted and evolved his game to develop his three-point shooting to a far greater degree than it was when he first came into the league in 2003. Unless you are Giannis and are the most dominant player in the paint within 5 feet of the basket since Shaquille O'Neal, you have to have a consistent jumper. You have to look at every single superstar in the NBA. They all got it. Even the big guys. Jokic's got a jumper. Embiid's got a jumper. Talk about Embiid at the end of the show. They all got it. And the big guys, the great defensive bigs, historically, can guard the perimeter. Edey cannot even come close. That's why I would have went small fire Rick Barnes. Because Tennessee's got a lot of good shooters on the team. Get him in the pick and roll. Put him on Dalton Connect. Like, get him in foul trouble, right? I think he only committed 1 or 2 fouls yesterday against my Vols. He played virtually the entire basketball game, probably because Tennessee wasn't getting him in foul trouble, because you're not going to score against Zach Edey as a small college player. You're not going to score him in the paint. You can score on him if you get him in the high pick and roll and try and get him in foul trouble and make Purdue have to take him off the floor. To me, what Zach Edey is the college version, and certainly a lesser version of this player, of Rudy Gobert. Now, Gobert's longer. Gobert is, it's weird to say this about Rudy Gobert, but more skilled offensively. Because, again, the fact of the matter is we forget about Zach Edey. Folks, Grant Williams, to use a Tennessee player, because this example does apply, Grant Williams plays for the Dallas Mavericks. Or, sorry, no, he got traded out. He plays for Charlotte Hornets now. We see Grant Williams now like this nice defensive player, kind of an enforcer, can knock down an open three. Folks, hand to God, go look at the tape. I watch every game Grant Williams played as a Vol. That Grant Williams in college is a different player than what he is in the NBA because he had to. Grant is about 6'6", 6'7". He had to change his game. Why is that? A, he wasn't a shooter in college by and large. And second reason, Grant Williams in the SEC with some nice, big players could back guys down because he was just bigger and stronger than everybody. You can't do that in the NBA against, Jokic or Embiid or Giannis or Anthony Davis. You can't do that. Heck, Sabonis even, who's not even that great of a defensive player. Zach Edey's not going to get those buckets with ease from 2 feet from the basket, virtually uncontested. They get to Purdue. He can't guard the perimeter, and he can't shoot. Now, the shooting thing he can improve on. But until we see a massive jump, and again, he missed 8 free throws yesterday. Lucky for him, the Vols missed a lot of free throws as well, lost some open jumpers, and that's ultimately what did my Tennessee Volunteers in. But again, I look at the comparisons. I look at the guys who are around his size. Again, Luka Garza 6 inches shorter, but similar impact. And he was a second-round pick. Oscar Tshiebwe, better than Edey on the defensive end, not too far. And Edey did drop 41 yesterday. That should be noted. But not the dominant offensive force, but certainly better than the defensive end. Undrafted. Both were Naismith College Player of the Year guys. One went in the second round, deep into the second round, I might add. One did not get drafted and is playing in the G League. Zach Edey is a second-round pick. He is, okay, if you don't want to call him a lesser version of Rudy Gobert, let's call him at best. And this is if he hits his ceiling in the NBA. He's Ivica Zubac. That's what he is. A big who can rebound, just kind of, again, just a big body, demand the paint, can rim protect. Although, against quicker, more skilled players, can he? You say, well, Wemby, 7'5". Here's the thing about Wemby that, people forget, and we're seeing what Wemby's doing right now. He's exceeded even my expectations. And I said Wemby, by the end of his career, long ways before we get there, hopefully at least, will be one of the 10 greatest players ever. I firmly believe that, certainly from what I've seen this year. Wemby's that gifted. Wemby could do all the things that Devin Booker can do. Not as quick as Booker, obviously, but that Devin Booker could do, or just a gifted, like, quick, offensive score type guy can do at 7'5". And you add the rim protecting as well. He's averaging 3 blocks a game, 3.5 blocks a game. That's why he's the number 1 overall pick, because he can shoot, because he can handle the basketball, because he's not one-dimensional like Zach Edey is. Listen, props to Zach Edey. He's down in the college game, which he should be doing to his credit. He's got good footwork. Again, good rim protector. He's 7'4". I would hope so. Guy's not an NBA player. He's not. We've seen a lot of college guys, go to the next level and do nothing after having a stellar career, because their games didn't translate to the next level. And no player, I would argue, again, I haven't exactly looked at NBA draft boards and looked at, guards from Lithuania since LaMelo Ball, at least. But I would argue there's no player in this upcoming draft less suited to the modern NBA than Zach Edey. He can't shoot, can't guard the perimeter. And we've seen a lot of 7-footers. A lot of guys his size that were great, that were dominant, just torching guys in the interior, in the paint, in the restricted area. Backup big, summer in the G League. That's Zach Edey. If he hits his ceiling, he's Ivica Zubac. That's what he is. And by the way, this is important. Why has he had to stay till his senior year? In the era of one and dones or going overseas, or I think they're getting rid of it, but the G League, not the G League, but not getting rid of the G League, but going to the G League to the NBA in a world where go to college, go somewhere, and then go to the NBA. Not saying it's the greatest system, but that's the system where all the best players use. Why has he had to stay till his senior year? Because the stock is very low, because it should be. That's where I'm at on Zach Edey. He's a heck of a college player. Certainly, I think the second best player in college basketball, Connect, to me is clearly the best, in large part because Connect's game is going to translate beautifully to the NBA. But that's where I'm at on Zach Edey. Speaking of which, I've referenced them. Certainly, their best player at points on today's show is Steph Curry. This is an all basketball show today, right? We got NBA, LeBron, and college basketball, women's college basketball, LSU, Iowa, which tips off in about 20 minutes or so. Cannot wait to watch it. UConn and USC. You know what? Let me predict that game quickly. I'm going to go with USC. I think both teams are excellent. USC has really talented scorer. Juju obviously being the most talented of all. I heard Andrea Carter, who works for ESPN, does a great job at covering the games. She was saying that Juju reminded her, and this is high praise, of a young Maya Moore, who y'all heard me talk about earlier. I think Maya Moore is the greatest, I don't care if WNBA or college basketball, the greatest female player I have ever seen. Listen, I didn't grow up and watch Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops, but oh my gosh, unbelievable that Juju reminded her of that. But UConn, Paige Beckers has been, people forget, Paige Beckers was kind of Caitlin Clark before Caitlin Clark. Now, Clark's better, but Paige, we forgot about her because I think she tore her ACL and missed a year. She's back with a vengeance. UConn's a great defensive team. Ariema obviously has the history in the tournament. I think UConn wins a kind of a defensive battle tonight, or at least they win it on their terms defensively. So UConn wins and they'll take on Iowa, and they'll get Paige versus Caitlin, or we could get Angel versus Juju, or we could get Angel versus Paige, or we could get Juju versus Caitlin. Oh my gosh, these matchups are fantastic. And then the winner, whoever is the last woman standing between those four, likely will have to face the undefeated team in the country, South Carolina. That in itself is going to be a fun story when it comes to pass, assuming South Carolina is able to win their next game, I think against NC State in the Final Four. All right, back to the NBA. Again, all basketball show. Talked about men's college basketball as well. Zach Edey, not an NBA starting center, and I don't think it's remotely debatable. To my Golden State Warriors. Now, this has been a roller coaster season. That goes without saying with my Warriors. Last Monday, I was, I think, another 2 times this season. I think around December, and then in early to mid-January, I was that close, last Monday being the 3rd instance this season, that close to selling my stock in the Warriors. But I'm like, you know what? I have a prime Steph Curry. I have Steve Kerr. Draymond is still impactful when on the floor. That's the key there. I like the bench, like the rookies. Kuminga's going to need to get back. That's a big key for them to be able to have that interior scoring presence. Kind of the lateral quickness, length of the defensive end. You need that. But I said, okay. And I tweeted this. I should have said it on the show at the time. but I tweeted this before the Warriors played the Miami Heat last Tuesday. Keep in mind, they had 4 games left on a 5-game road trip after losing to Minnesota last Sunday. I said, if the Warriors go 9-3, if they win 75% of their last 12 games, that's a nice sample size. Win 75%, I'm absolutely in on them as a title contender because they play bad teams. They play Charlotte and they play, San Antonio's a bad team with a generational player, but you are seeing some signs of growth. And San Antonio almost won last night in a game where they were missing probably their second and third best players. The Warriors play Portland. They play the Jazz twice. They used to play some bad teams. But they play the Lakers, who are hot. They play the Pelicans, who are hot. Okay, the Warriors have some tough matchups. They played the Magic, who were playing really well last Wednesday, and got the W without Draymond in a hard defensive battle type of game. They beat the Spurs last night, 117-113. Steph Curry was excellent, dropped 33 points, hit 7 3-pointers, 12 for 23 for the field. By the way, to 8 assists, but it could have, Steph Curry's not a point guard. Okay. And Draymond Green, simply put, was... in terms of overall impact, Wemby was awesome. Steph was the best player on the floor. Wemby was amazing. And I would make a very, very strong argument that Draymond was just as impactful, if not more so. Draymond Green's stat line yesterday against the San Antonio Spurs, against Wemby, guarding Wemby when he's on the floor. 21 points, 11 assists, 6 rebounds, 6 steals, and the game-winning defensive play at the end. That is now Draymond's not going to drop 20 on a game. If you get 20 from Draymond, you better win, okay? Because those are few and far between these days. But again, the 11 assists, 6 rebounds, that's pretty good for Draymond. I think that's a little under his average. 6 steals. And again, makes the defensive play to win it. And I watched that. I was obviously excited my Warriors won. And ever since I sent the tweet saying, hey, if we can go 9-3, I believe in this team as a title contender. Ladies and gentlemen, we're 4-0. I think I might have spurred something. Maybe one of the Warriors coaches or players saw it. We know Steph looks at his phone and looks at Twitter at halftime. So I don't know. Maybe he saw it. Maybe I'll take credit for the Warriors' success. I don't know. But I found myself excited with the win. Okay, we're getting some help. The Suns lost, and okay, here we go. The Rockets lost. Rockets weren't catching us anyway. And I thought about Draymond Green, and I found myself a little irritated. And I say this as a guy, I just uploaded my Draymond Green video earlier today. Be sure to check it out on YouTube. I love Draymond Green. I think he is absolutely the offensive and defensive catalyst for the Golden State Warriors and has been ever since he got there, certainly since Steve Kerr put him in the starting lineup when David Lee went down in 2014. I've always been a Draymond Green guy, and I've always defended him to the nth degree. Like when folks have said, hey, you got to move on from Draymond. He's more trouble than he's worth. The juice is no longer worth the squeeze. All the weird cliches we've heard with Draymond Green, all of which are absolutely incorrect, as I'm about to show you in just a second. But because of his impact, that's why I'm like, okay, if he can just rein it in. You can be emotional. That's fine. You can get in the other player's head. I have no issue with that. No issue with that at all. From Draymond, from anybody. It's okay, you get one technical, again, not to relitigate the situation on Wednesday, last Wednesday against the Magic, but get the 1T. It's a game you have to win. Second night of a back-to-back in Florida. You need this game against a really talented Magic team. And then you intentionally got ejected because he said what he wanted to say, some obviously some crude language in there to say the very least, and then turns his back to walk to the locker room. Then you hear the whistle, and then he's thrown out of the game. He's already turned to go to the locker room before they officially eject him. He wanted to get thrown out. It's those instances. It's the Yusuf Nurkic punch back in December. The Gobert choke. The problem with that was he held on too long. Draymond held on to Gobert too long. Could have choked him out. That would have not been good. No violence. But Gobert was about to chokehold Klay Thompson. The video shows it. So Draymond's defending Klay. Absolutely defend him in that regard. The ejection against the Magic and the punch on Yusuf Nurkic, different story. When that man is on the floor for the Warriors, they are a different basketball team on both ends. Again, as the stat line shows you, 21 points. You're not going to get that from Draymond consistently, of course, but 11 assists, any given night you can get that. 6 rebounds, 6 steals. And here's again, I don't usually use a graphic from a previous show and then just update it to whatever the recent data says, but I think it applies here because we're talking about Draymond. We can put this up here, folks. 2023 through 24 Warriors. When Draymond, When he plays a full game, folks, when Draymond this season starts a game and finishes a game without getting tossed, the Warriors are 28-17. They're 11 games over 500. If that held for a regular season, they'd be a top 4, top 5 seed in the Western Conference as opposed to fighting for their lives in the play-in tournament. They're 1-3 when it gets thrown out. Again, you see the asterisk there on the bottom of the screen. 2-11 since 2019 when Draymond gets thrown out of a game. 1-3 this year when Draymond gets tossed out of a game. The first win was against the Magic on Wednesday. They previously not won a game when Draymond had been tossed. When Draymond doesn't play at all, 11-14. 3 games under 500. So let's just combine the gets thrown out games with the doesn't play games. Because again, you didn't finish the game. Draymond, when he doesn't start and finish a game, the Golden State Warriors this season would be 12-17, 5 games under 500. When he finishes the game, 11 games over 500. They're an excellent basketball team. This is why I've said when it's like, move on from Draymond Green. You can't because he's too valuable. If Draymond was the guy who plays in Houston, he who shall not be named, who said, I don't respect anybody until they give me 40, and the Lakers put 40 on his head. If it was him, I'd be like, just get him out of here. He's not impactful. He's never impacted winning at the high level a day in his life. Get him out. Bench him, Steve Kerr. Draymond's different. The numbers bear it out. They're better offensively, better defensively. They win more games. Steph's better when he's on the floor. Again, your best player's on the floor when somebody's out there, play that guy as much as possible with the other guy. I just found myself watching. I'm like, dang, if Draymond, and this is what stresses me out. And he almost, and to his credit, I should say to his credit, but kept his emotions in check. Grant Williams, go Vols, smart guy. When the Warriors play the Hornets on Friday, game's pretty much out of reach. Warriors are blowing the Hornets out. Draymond's still on the floor. And Grant kind of gets in his grill, kind of bumps him a little bit, trying to provoke him. I think you will see that. And as the moment gets bigger, as the stakes get higher, as emotions across the board, every player, coach, and fan, whether it be the play-in tournament, whether it be hopefully for the Warriors, the playoffs, will he be able to rein in the emotion? Because the reason I asked that question is because Draymond appeared to show very little remorse for an ejection that literally brought Steph Curry to tears. If nothing else, you owe it to that guy to say, dang, well, it really did that to my teammate, my brother. He's like, again, Steph's kind of like the big brother, and Draymond's like the little brother. Like, they are tight. Like, wow, I really did that to him. And the video, as I showed on Friday's show, when Steph is, let's go, high-fiving, he just finished playing soccer with 2 chairs, is Kevin Wild. Shout out to Kevin Wild. And First Things First, the best sports show in television, not named inside the NBA. Played soccer with 2 chairs at the end of the Warriors bench. High-five Warrior fan, pumping his fist. Draymond's at the end of the hall. Big grin on his face, and he's doing the night-night. And Steph, the video is taken from behind Steph, so you see the 30 on his jersey. He kind of daps Draymond up and keeps walking. Usually it's dap up. Yeah, let's go. Like kind of like yelling at each other, right? Like, because you're pumped up, you won. He dapped Draymond up and kept walking. He was pissed at Draymond. Draymond didn't show much remorse on his podcast to Steph none of it. So that's what concerns me. When he's on the floor, the Golden State Warriors can be anybody, maybe with the possible exception of Denver, because Denver's going to be tough for anybody. Everybody else, fair game. They can beat anybody in a 7-game series. Denver's tough. Crazier things have happened. Everybody else, they can beat. If Draymond Green starts and finishes games. So that game last night, as fantastic as Draymond was, it brought a different level of like a fear, like, gosh, I hope he reins it in. Because I was thinking after the therapy and Draymond did this big, like, I wouldn't say emotional podcast, but really remorseful podcast when he came back from a suspension. I was like, okay, like, he's going to play with the same fire. I want him to, but he's not going to put himself in positions to compromise his ability to be on the floor for his teammates. And then that thing happens in Orlando. I'm like, we're back at square one. We'll see. Nonetheless, though, big win for the Warriors, 4 in a row. Draymond was excellent. So was Steph. Almost blew it there at the end. The Spurs went in kind of a crazy run fueled by Wemby. But Draymond made some big plays at the end. Clay hit a big shot with about 30 seconds left to create some separation. So Warriors are able to get the W. I said going to Tuesday's game against the Heat, I tweeted, this is after the Timberwolves loss on Sunday, I tweeted, if the Warriors finish 9-3, I buy into them as a title contender. Since then, 4-0. I'm just saying. Tough game tomorrow against Dallas, though. Luka's hitting underhanded three. It wasn't a three. His foot was on the line. Luka's hitting underhanded shots almost from three-point range. Like, Dallas is playing unbelievable. They won 7 in a row, 9 of their last 10. That's going to be tough, but kind of a measuring stick game for the Warriors, especially at home. The Warriors are 6. Last thing on the Warriors we'll move on to Joel Embiid. The Warriors, ladies and gentlemen, 6 games over. Remember, the Warriors won 11 road games last year. 11. They went 11-31. This year, they're 6 games over 500 on the road. They're a game under 500 at home. Figure that out for me. I mean, my gosh, it's kind of mind-boggling. Okay, moving on now. Finishing the show, and then I want to watch LSU and Iowa. That'll be a great game. Cannot wait. Joel Embiid's back. According to reports from Woj this morning, he could be back as soon as tomorrow in the 76ers game. Tuesday, who do they play? The Sixers play the Oklahoma City Thunder on TNT, so nationally televised game. OKC's a 5.5-point road favorite. Now, here's the thing with the Philadelphia 76ers, then we'll talk about Embiid. So Embiid got hurt against my Warriors middle of January, or actually toward the end of January. He already had a kind of a knee issue, got hurt. He had a collision with Kuminga and has not played since. So again, didn't play like the rest of January, all of February, all of March. And coming back right in the home stretch for the Philadelphia 76ers, who right now sit in the play-in tournament. If we could pull up the stats here for the Sixers, there it is. Okay. So the Sixers this season with Joel Embiid, when he was healthy, won 76.5% of their games. So translation, they were an excellent basketball team. Maxey, Harris, the supporting role. Nick Nurse, a big upgrade over Doc Rivers. Without Joel Embiid, without a guy who has led the league in scoring the last years and very well could have done it this season, very well could have won another MVP had he qualified and met the criteria for games played. Sixers with Embiid win 76% of their games. Without him, they win 34% of their games. They win over double the games with Embiid without the Embiid, which for a team that builds their entire system and their roster around a player, and then when that player's gone, of course you're going to have that kind of impact. There's no question about it. And Embiid's regular season resume speaks for itself. Notice what I said, though, regular season. And this has been, I find myself, I did this with Jokic too, and to his credit, man, he proved me dead wrong and went on an insane postseason run. Denver won the championship last year, and Jokic won finals MVP, and Jokic, not that he did not have my respect for, but simply put, I didn't think he should have won either MVP. And I still don't think he should have won the first MVP. That should have went to Steph. But point being, prove me wrong. Maybe Embiid will do it. But I seem to be the only human being among fans, media, anybody who acknowledges the simple fact, and I get pushback for saying this, but acknowledges Joel Embiid, MVP last year. So that puts him in a select group of NBA players who've won that prestigious award. He's the only MVP in the history of the NBA to have never gone to the conference final. Not the NBA, the conference finals. We have never watched, again, he plays in the Eastern Conference Finals in Philadelphia, so we'll talk about that. Whenever Kevin Harlan for TNT or Mike Breen for ESPN comes on, welcome to Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, he has never said, featuring the Philadelphia 76ers led by Joel Embiid. Those words have never been uttered, except on 2K. If you play with Philadelphia and get them to that point. That's it. And here's the thing with Embiid. And some of these gripes and complaints, I think, are generally speaking pretty valid. That when Embiid first came in and started to establish himself as kind of like an all-star player, right? When he missed his first 2 years due to injury, when he was drafted in, I think it was 2014 out of Kansas, 2016-17 his first year. By year 2, year 3, he's an all-star. And his co-star, his running mate, is Ben Simmons, who himself was an all-star coming in the NBA, immensely talented guard at LSU, couldn't shoot, but could do basically everything else at an elite level. They didn't fit together. And Simmons, I talk about with Caleb Williams, right? Give me the guy who cries over the guy who's apathetic. That's Joel Embiid, and that's Ben Simmons. Embiid was devastated when Kawhi knocked his team out at the buzzer in Game 7 5 years ago. Simmons, Blank face. Blank face. Embiid was crushed, weeping, going to the locker room. So Embiid, after a while, was like, man, this guy didn't care. He didn't care. Get him out of here. I want to win a championship. So they got Ben Simmons out of there. They brought James Harden in. Now, Harden certainly cares more than Simmons. Simmons not playing right now. Harden is. Say what you want about James Harden, but to a certain degree, he cares about basketball. He wouldn't be here if he didn't. We know Harden, playoff history, comes in out of shape, is as big of a liability as there could possibly be on the defensive end, is inefficient, comes up small in the biggest games. So Joel Embiid's like, I can't win with Harden. Philadelphia fans, Joel Embiid defenders, man, he can't win with Harden. What do you want him to do? Nobody's won with Harden. Chris Paul didn't win with Harden. KD didn't win with Harden. Westbrook didn't win with Harden. KD twice, actually, with Harden. Couldn't win with him. So why do you expect Embiid to do it? Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Harden's playoff history speaks for itself. So we're going to trade Harden to the Clippers, get all these assets, which we're basically going to save to maybe add another player. But Tyrese Maxey, all-star this season. I believe he's an all-star this season. Yeah, he was. Has a 50-point game this season. A heck of a number 2. That's your number 2 guy. Way more reliable than Harden. Your number 3 is Tobias Harris, who's having a really good season. Your coach. Remember the coach thing. Brett Brown was his guy when he first came in. Well, Brett Brown, kind of a developmental guy, not going to coach a team to his championship. So what they do, they brought in Doc Rivers, who has a history, an ancient history of coaching teams to championships in 2008 with the Boston Celtics. So they bring in Doc Rivers. Well, Doc Rivers' playoff history isn't very good. Okay, we'll move on from Doc. We'll bring in Nick Nurse, who won the first championship in the history of the Toronto Raptors franchise. And given where the franchise is at now, probably even their first one for some time. Nick Nurse, they upgraded coach. Tyrese Maxey, they upgraded the number 2 star. Tobias Harris, now they're number 3. Good roster, good bench. I mean, hey, they did, after all, win 76% of their games when Embiid was in the lineup before the injury. One of the biggest excuses for Embiid in the past, in the playoffs, has been, well, Bryson, come on. 2019 against the Raptors, he got sick. 2020, Simmons was hurt. 2021, he was dealing with an injury. 2022, he's dealing with multiple injuries. 2023, he was beat up. Okay, fair enough. By all accounts, otherwise he wouldn't be out there starting tomorrow. Seems to be healthy to me. We'll see what he looks like, and I'm sure he'll be in a minutes restriction. They'll work him back to the lineup. If he's a little out of shape, hey, he's missed 2.5 months. It takes some time. Got 7 games left to get him in shape and a lot of practices. But those legs will likely be fresh for the playoffs, way fresher than they've ever been. So you're fresh now. So then, if Embiid isn't healthy or gets hurt in the playoffs, you could still use I called an excuse, well, he always gets hurt. But what you will then simultaneously have to say and acknowledge, if you have that belief, is then he's not reliable. In terms of his performance, in terms of physically, Jokic is always there. Steph in the playoffs is always, Steph's missed some playoff games, but when it really matters, Steph's there. Even when he's beat up in 2016, in 2022, Steph was there. LeBron has never missed a playoff game. KD, he's always there. Tatum's always there. Luka, when he's in the playoffs, is always there. Embiid historically is not. So again, if he's healthy and he's got fresh legs, this is a team, and again, the Sixers have played bad basketball without Embiid. Well, that's because the roster's constructed to have Embiid. Of course they're going to struggle. With Embiid, ladies and gentlemen, they were 26-8. They won 76% of their games. Clearly the roster's good enough to go on a run. If you got the fresh legs, if you don't have to worry about sort of the nagging wear and tear, here you go. Weakest Eastern Conference we've seen in some time. Cleveland, nobody really trusts, and the Indiana doesn't play defense. The Knicks will be worn down by round 2 because that's Thibodeau's history. Here you go. It's set right in front of you. If he's either hurt and is coming back early, or he gets hurt in the playoffs despite being fresh, you can still use the excuse that Joel Embiid's injury history has prevented him from being great in the playoffs. What you will simultaneously have to address and acknowledge, then that means he's not reliable when I need him most. It's as simple as that. If Steph or LeBron or Tatum or Luka, Jokic if those guys just, man, they always seem to get hurt once the playoffs roll around. That's why they don't play well. Okay, fine. Then they're not reliable. They're not. You can't win a championship with them as your best player. That simple. That's where I'm at on Joel Embiid. I think I'm on an island with this. I really do. But that's where I'm at with him. Listen, I will never root for Philadelphia as long as I live. That is a given. But I do like seeing athletes prove me wrong, especially athletes that generally, I'm like off the court, I like Joel Embiid. Seems like a nice guy, seems to be a family man. Again, has been a far better representation for the Sixers than Ben Simmons ever thought about being, or that Harden ever thought about being. Now he has a reliable two who he can count on in Maxey, who gets better by the year, and Tobias Harris, who's a good three, and a good bench, and length, and Nick Nurse, the best coach he's had in Philadelphia. Here you go. So we'll see what happens. It'll be fun. LSU and I was literally about to tip off, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off of the show after I look at his comment real quick. Patrick Brown, who writes some great stuff for the Grid Network. Shout out to Patrick. It was a beautiful day for me. Duke goes down, and I specifically said NC State was the team nobody wants to play. Lo and behold, I was right. Happy Monday. You were 1,000% correct in that. Patrick called it in our Grid Network group chat. He said NC State's going to win, and doggone it, they won. They dominated the second half. DJ Burns. Like I said, I love underdogs when they're college basketball blue bloods or college teams we're used to seeing in the final round, so to speak. I don't want to see Loyola Chicago. No disrespect to the great Sister Jean. I don't want to see little schools go to the Final Four. Call me elitist, knock yourself out, but I want to see the big dogs at the top. Here we go. Again, LSU, Iowa about to tip off. I've got Iowa 75-72. Both Reese and Clark and Flaugy Johnson, by the way, play great. Caitlin drops 34 points, 11 assists, 8 rebounds, closes the game out down the stretch, and Iowa will play UConn in the Final Four. The only reason I'm picking UConn, obviously Paige Beckers, again, a little more experience than Juju. Juju will have her moment. She will, again, the fact what she's doing as a freshman is crazy. But UConn, Gino, the defense, a lot of a great guard play over there. They've got a lot of, again, excellent defensive players. So UConn will win it tonight. But this is a great night for women's college basketball. It should be celebrated. And I anticipate we will get 2 awesome games. And with that, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Again, Iowa tonight, I'll be reacting to the game and as well as probably to the other game on Wednesday. Cannot wait for that. March Madness on the women's side has been fantastic. It will get even better tonight. Biggest night in the history of women's college basketball. Very, very exciting for that. So what else do we got for business? Oh, yeah. Be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the NBA playoffs, which is just in 2 to 3 weeks or so. So let's see if we can get to that point. Those who have already subscribed, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate y'all. Please tell your friends about it, your family about it, everybody you know about it, except for your sleeping cat, because you will make them mad. Anybody who has not subscribed, just takes a couple seconds. If you're on YouTube, go down there, hit that big red subscribe button, and boom, you're part of the Carving Up family, and we love you for being here. Just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. We dare to be different at the Grid Network. I'm wearing my Grid hat right now, so it's very appropriate. All right. See y'all on Wednesday. Stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, 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 this is so important. Contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. Left or right, doesn't matter where you lean. This is a problem we have to address. There is no one solution for it, despite what anybody may tell you. We got to come together and fix this because we've got to. It's so important. All right. See y'all on Wednesday. Can't wait for these games, man. Cannot wait for these games. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Caitlin about to carry the ship now. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.